Welcome to the video presentation, Using Table Dimensions in HTML, Part 2. We're going to continue to work on the trees.html document that we've started on. In a previous video, you'll remember we talked about how setting the width of an HTML document can be done either as a percentage or, as we have in this case, as an absolute size. In this case, we've set it to 660 pixels wide. So the table that we've created shows up as 660 pixels wide. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make some additional changes to our table. I'm going to change the data. I'm going to expand some of the names. I'm going to call the red oak the oak a red oak, the pine a white pine, the cherry a Bing cherry, and the willow a weeping willow. I'll then save the document and then move the new file into Internet Explorer. You'll notice here that the different columns are of various widths, the widest one being the weeping willow, the next being the tree's name, size, and price column with the headers, and the narrowest column being the red oak column. If you remembered when we talked about table width, we talked about the fact that table width is auto-sized by the browser unless we specifically define it. Well, the same thing happens with the individual columns. Depending on the data in these columns, the browser tries to decide what would be the most appropriate amount of size based on the total table width. Since we've told the browser that it must be 660 pixels wide in this case, it proportions the widths that are available depending on the data size. That's why Weeping Willow, having the most characters in its column, gets the most space. Tree name next gets the next amount of space. And the smallest amount of space goes to red oak, since it is the shortest of all the names. It has the least length of data in the column. This is kind of a nice feature in some cases to let the browser try to figure out how to best present the data. However, it can look a little sloppy, and you may want to have a little more control over your data. In this case, we'll go back to the code. If you think about the fact that we have 5 different columns, one for the tree name header, one for the red oak, one for the white pine, one for the Bing cherry, and one for the weeping willow. And we thought about what it would take to actually divide that equally. You can either create a number that divides 660 into 5 and put an absolute value, or a percentage. In this case, we're going to put a percentage. We're going to again use the width attribute. 20% would be 1/5. Since there's 5 items, that's exactly what we're looking for. So for each of the columns, I'm going to set it to a width of 20% of the overall available space. Then I'm going to save my HTML. We're going to look at the table one last time the way it was before we made these changes. Again, you'll see each one of these columns have a little different width to them. What we've done here is we've defined every width to be equal, 20% of the total width available. So every width of a column is 20% of the total width available. I'm going to go ahead and move the saved file with the changes into Internet Explorer and take a look at it. You'll now notice that Internet Explorer displays each of the columns as an equal width, even though there may be more data length in the Weeping Willow column than in the red oak column. By using the width specification, you can control the size of the actual columns in your table.